Hey, Michelle. I should start off with welcome all of our listeners to Michelle and Mickey's Performance Podcast. We are back with another thrilling episode and big news, not, I guess, big news, but big event over the weekend, the Men's World Championship race in Nice. Yeah, what'd you think, Michelle?
Oh my gosh, I thought it was one of the best races I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, it was incredible. So I started to tell you before we started recording, and then we're like, we should be recording this. This episode is largely going to be quite positive about the race itself. But before we even get into that, I just feel like I want to rip Ironman a new one for the way that they make watching the race so hard for people in America. So I'll share with the listeners is that I got to watch the vast majority of it, and I did so using a VPN. Like I had to go out of my way to buy a separate way to connect to the internet so that my YouTube thought I was connecting in from the UK. And when you do that, then it's like you can go to YouTube and you can watch it on YouTube, which means I could watch it on delay because largely that race happened overnight for most Americans. And so maybe if you're on the East Coast, you could have gotten up and watched the run, on Sunday morning. But for most people, it was happening in the middle of the night. So people didn't get to watch the way that it played out. And that's the beauty of it, I think, is watching the dynamics of it and who did what and who made what move when and how did that decision and that guy affect, what was going on later in the race? Because Ironman is largely it's a it's a it's an energy game, right? Like how much everybody has a certain amount of energy and where are you choosing to spend that energy? And these guys are so incredibly fit that they have choices. They're not just going about as hard as they can until they can't anymore. They're holding back on purpose at times. They're making moves on. They're deciding, should I go? Should I not? And so watching the whole thing, there's so much to learn. In America, we get screwed on being able to watch that unless you buy a VPN. Listen, I'm not sponsored by any VPN. I'm not promoting it in a way that I'm trying to make money. I'm just saying if you want to bypass the way they screw Americans over, it's actually not that expensive to get a VPN. And once you get one, it's very, very simple and easy to use.
Yeah,
And so that's how I watched.
there's other privacy benefits for VPNs too. Just if you're in the techie minded way, or you're just concerned about maybe your information being out there, VPNs are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So my own little stick for a VPN.
I think years ago I'd heard about VPNs and somehow in my mind I'm like, oh, that's for people who are committing crimes online or your dark, the dark web or blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't do any of that. I just want to go on YouTube and watch what I want to watch. But when I found out that Ironman plays all of its races on YouTube, which means you can go back and watch the replays. So for me, what I did, I'm in Hawaii. It started at 7 p.m. on Saturday night, my time, which is ideal, right? So I could watch the because I don't have a life and go out on Saturday nights. Let's get real. So, you know what I mean? But I was able to watch the pre-race show. I could see the interviews. I watched the swim. I watched the first part of the bike. I went to sleep. I got up in the morning. I did not check Instagram. So I'm I don't want to know yet. And so I just turned YouTube back on and started where I left off for the most part. I mean, I fast forwarded a little bit through the bike, but largely I got to watch how it all played out. I don't know where to start. I mean, everybody, this isn't going to be spoiler alert, the Norwegians swept the
Well,
podium,
I figured,
obviously,
yeah.
but everybody knows, right? So I'm not worried about spoiling it. But I feel there's so many talking points of where we could go to talk about. Because here's the thing when I watch those races, I'm genuinely watching to be what can we learn? What are
Mhm.
the takeaways? What can we then apply to ourselves as age groupers, even if you're not doing Ironman, but just you're trying
Oh
to
yeah,
excel at
yeah.
sport or whatever. And the big picture takeaway for me was watching those Norwegians, because there'd been a little bit of scuttlebutt about the Norwegians sweeping the podium before in some of the pre-race interviews and whatnot. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I didn't think they were going to actually do that, but it wasn't because I didn't think they were good enough. It was because literally I was there are 7 guys that could win this race and nobody would be surprised. Right. I mean, they're so good. So I just largely didn't think it was going to happen because there were just too many other good guys, not because the Norwegians weren't good enough. But I will say, toward the end of the bike, when I was watching, they're I don't know, 130K into the bike or something. And, a couple of the guys, Martin Van Riel was still off the front. But I like, this is what was happening. Martin Van Ril was off the front. Sam Laidlow had a terrible start for various reasons. And that's another talking point that I want to hit on later. Cause like watching people like have their hardships and then overcome them
Yeah.
and continue on was also an incredible story. And Sam
Mhm.
Laidlow was one of those. So Sam Laidlow was back in like 35th at the beginning of the bike because he'd had some issues on the swim. And I actually genuinely thought he was going to drop out. Watching him run through transition after the swim, he was walking like he was not running with any sort of intention. You could see in his eyes that he was like, fuck this. Like, I don't care about this at all. Like, it just, and you were like, oh, that's not a guy who's trying to win this race. He was trotting. And then he was way back. And I was like, well, Sam Laidlow's out of this, right? So, like, that opens up doors for some other people. And what a surprise. Nobody would have guessed that. And then like little by little, he gets his mojo back. And I don't remember at what point, but at some point in the back half of the bike, he makes his way toward the front of the race. I think Martin Van Ril was still out front, but Sam Laidlow goes off the front. He passed everyone. And when he did, Christian Blumenfeld went with him. Like, and I'm watching this and going like, they're only like a minute back. Like Martin Van Riel's only like 1 minute up and Sam Laidlow is about to go. And in the previous interviews, one of the questions that was asked, it was asked to Christian, like, what's the gap that you would be comfortable with giving Sam Laidlow off the bike, like in T2, right? Like how much time do you think, it could be? And he said like 6.5 minutes, right? Like that he was
Mhm.
comfortable, like that if Sam Laidlow came off the bike 6.5 minutes ahead of him, that he was like, cool, got this, right? Like I can run that down. And so here it's like they're in the back half of the bike, like they're so late in the bike and they're together. And so when Sam I hear dogs, when I like, so Sam Laidlow makes this move in the back part of the bike and Christian goes with him and you're like, you're burning a match to go with this guy who you don't need to do that. Cause like, I mean, at best now it's so close to the end of the bike. I mean, he's maybe going to get 2 minutes on you. Like you don't need to spend your energy that way going with him. Like, why don't you just stay with your guys? Like stay with like Christian or so Gustav and Casper and Nick Thompson. Those guys were like right with him. And Christian left them to go do that. He burned a match doing it. And I'm thinking, that doesn't make any sense. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, the Norwegians have a chance here. Like looking at sort of the top 7 or 8 guys in the last 30K of the bike, I was like, the Norwegians, like, who can run out of this group? Like, I think they're the best runners. I'm like, this literally could be a Norwegian sweep of the podium. And then what you find out afterward is that Christian made that move because he knew how fast Casper and Gustav were running. And he wanted 2 minutes on them starting the marathon so he wouldn't have to battle shoulder to shoulder with his teammates, is essentially like what that was about. But anyway, so watching that kind of strategy was just incredible. And then like, we're like, they're 5K into the run and there's 5 guys running together. And it ended up being like the top 5 guys overall. So the 3 Norwegians and then like Martin Van Ril and Sam Laidlow. Literally, they're running in a train, just top 5 guys, like shoulder to shoulder in a pack. They're pack. Like, when do you ever see that in an Ironman World Championship? And like, I was just like, I mean, it was funny because like it's Sunday morning and my husband is like super into watching soccer. He watches Premier League soccer. So like he's in the other room with like the big screen TV with like the soccer games on. I'm like, hey, can you turn that down? Because like I'm in the other room and I've just got my iPad out because I'm, watching through my VPN on YouTube. Like, and I'm like, I felt the need to commentate the race to him. Like he doesn't care at all, but I'm like, you gotta watch it. Oh my God, like look at what's happening. Anyway, it was just really fun to go that like to have an Ironman race that is that close. And somebody did the math on the lead changes in the marathon. There were 12 lead changes during the marathon. And so, like, while you're watching, you're like, I don't know who's going to win this. And so, like, there's so many times, like, right when you're watching Ironman and you're like, oh, I could walk away for half an hour and it's literally going to be the exact same thing. And it's like kind of boring to watch or whatever. But, like, I was sort of glued to my screen. So I'm like, I don't know who is like, so at some point, Christian and Gustav went off the front and they dropped Martin and Sam and Casper. And in the post race interviews, what you hear at that time was that, and this is from Casper, who ran a 2:29, by the way, 2:29:22. He ran to go 7:51 on that knee score. He went 15 minutes faster than Sam Laidlow went last 2 years ago.
That's in
But
that's
anyway,
incredible.
yeah, it was incredible. Yeah. And so he's at some point, I can't remember if he was third at that point or if he was back in fifth, or I don't remember what was going on behind because they were really only showing the top two. But afterward, you hear these three guys and they're talking about their strategy and like how they were trying to beat each other, the top three Norwegians. And Casper's saying when Gustav started pushing the pace to drop Sam and Martin, he was running like 220 pace. Like 220 marathon pace is what he was running for. I don't know how long, but like for a couple of kilometers, like he's trying to create a gap. And Casper was looking at his watch going like, I don't think that's sustainable. Like, I think that I should hold my pace here. Like, he's like, I'm running 230 marathon pace right now. And while I feel really good, it's still really early. And I don't feel like I should make that move to, go faster. And then you find out that Gustav did that because he was like, I didn't want to be running with Christian in the last 10K because like Christian has an ability to like really turn on afterburners and sprint in a way that like Gustav didn't think he could contend with. And he thought his best chance against Christian at that time would be to wear Christian's legs out by holding a high pace early instead of like letting Christian be fresh enough. And Casper's back there going like, I think that's suicide for both of you. And so like, I'm going to and so everybody's playing their cards, right? Like they're trying to beat each other, which I can relate to. Like as an American, right? Like we're very competitive. And like when you're trying to win and you're trying to figure out like, what's your weakness? What's your weakness? What's my strength? What cards do I have to play? Like, how am I going to do this? To realize how strategic it is, like at that top level, right? That they're not all are just like, this is the pace I'm going to go. And like, it is what it is. No, they're not out there just individual time trialing it and then seeing who finishes first. It's straight up a strategic race where they surge on each other. They make choices. Should I go or should I not? You have to understand physiology. You have to understand how well have you been feeling? Are you hydrated? What are the conditions? What's your heart rate at that time? And so like when Casper finally went back to the front, I mean, then you watch like Gustav start falling off the back and it looks like he's puking at one point. And you're like, oh God. And you see his turnover slowing and you're like, oh, Gustav's going to be third. And at one moment, and after the race, he's like, I thought I was going to be the one to lose it for the team, cause like at that point now, like the three of them are off the front and it's clear that it's going to be a Norwegian podium as long as whoever's in third doesn't shit the bed, right? Like if whoever's in third cramps or pukes or starts walking or whatever, and then either Sam or Martin come up from behind and take the third place, they would be like letting their team down. And so the third place guy, even the second place guys are like, after they knew Casper's winning, because Casper at some point was like, now he's 2 minutes ahead. And they're like, we're not catching Casper. And so then they knew that they just had to like hold. And they both, Christian and Gustav at the end, were talking about how they were afraid they were going to lose it for the team by not being able to hold on to third, right? Which is also really cool while they're still figuring out how to beat each other. But then at the end, and I tell you what, this part, like it gave me chills. I was so happy. I felt all of their emotions. It was super cool that Casper won, first of all. But then like when Gustav crosses the line, the first thing he does is give the most genuine hug to Casper. Like you could tell that there wasn't like disappointment in Gustav that he didn't win, even though he wanted to win. And he made that clear. I'm here to win. I want to win. I'm going to do everything I can to win. He did everything he could to win. He landed second. There was no disappointment there. It was a straight up congratulations to Casper. I hope this is first of many world championship wins for him to come. Right? And they're so complimentary to each other. And then like in the post-race press conferences, like all three of them are saying, I would not be here without these two, right? That the reason that I'm here is because of these two. And to me, it was so like, and it was interesting because even when you watch like an American like journalist or media person like asking them questions, and this is the part that really struck me, and it's a cultural thing. So like as Americans, we thrive on this feeling of like rugged individualism, right? It's like we're very competitive and it's me against the world and I'm doing it by myself and I don't depend on anyone. I'm not asking for help from anyone. Like I'm just going to go dominate like by myself. And I think that the big picture lesson that we learned from this race is that and it can't even be like a fake do it together. It can't be like a here's a group that I'm going to participate with, but I'm just going to use you to help me get better, but I'm not going to give back to you to help you get better. Right. Like, and I feel like that's how even Americans like in training groups would be, or there would be some sort of animosity, right? That's like where, yeah, like, and to be honest, like I have built this myself. Like I'm pretty good at training by myself. Like I'm pretty good at motivating myself. Like I don't need anyone to meet me to do a training session, right? I don't need someone near me to push. Although whenever I'm with somebody else, I'm always going faster than I am when I'm alone. So like without a doubt. But there have been times where I'm thinking of when I bring a training partner in, well, I'm helping her more than she's helping me, which I think is like probably legitimately the case because like I'm there, I'm the one bringing the workout. I'm
Right,
like
you're the coach.
right. Yeah, yeah, so it's just kind of like, and so there is a feeling of like I'm helping you more than you're helping me. So again, if it's my athlete, I don't mind that at all.
Right,
But
right.
if it's like somebody who I feel like you're trying to benefit off me, but you're going to gain more from this than I am, so I don't want to do that. I have felt that, and now that I've seen this whole thing with like what the Norwegians just did, I'm like, I got to rethink all of it because
No,
like
I
the reason that they're good is because they're not like when the gun goes off, they're trying to beat each other. And they will say that outright. Like they will do everything they can to beat each other. But in their preparations leading up, like they're sharing all their data, they're sharing their strengths and weaknesses, they're trying to solve problems together, right? Like they're it's like the sharpens steel, or like, they're all better because they're not holding back and trying to like win training, right? Like they're trying to help each other throughout the whole preparation, not just on a couple of days. It's not like, oh, we're only getting together like on Tuesdays. And when we do, I'm going to make sure that like I'm not telling you everything that's going on. Right. No, like there are three of them together all the full time and developing each other. And I wonder how things change going forward if they do it all. Like if we see more training groups forming,
yeah,
or if they like
sure.
can't do it because this is this like Nordic culture that those guys were ingrained with from the time they were kids, that like we give each other the benefit of the doubt. I am working with you in good faith that you're giving your best effort all the time and that you're not here to hurt me, but you're here to help me. And I feel like as Americans, we're so skeptical, right? That like I'm gonna just assume that your intentions are bad. Like that's just a cultural thing that like pick an area and like people assume that like intentions are not good.
I mean, I think it is. I do think it's prevalent in a lot of the adult, like Ironman, like the single sport, right? Like ultra running. However, there's a lot of, I think, good examples in track and field and marathoning of pro groups elevating each other, right? I think that subset of athletics has tapped into that, when you have truly supportive people within your group, you can all elevate. And I'm not an expert in a lot of these marathoning clubs. There's a bunch out there, and not all, and some have had very serious problems. I mean, in terms of abuse and encouraging eating disorders, right? I'm not talking about those, so there are caveats, right? When you have group settings and you have a coach there, right, that abuse can happen. So I don't obviously condone any of that, but I do think that there has been some good examples in track and field or at the collegiate level, right? But we haven't seen it in the sport of triathlon at the upper age group level, right? I mean, maybe a little bit here and there. I feel like, I mean, this isn't the same, right? But back when we were both training a lot more and more active in racing, like the training camps were a big deal, right? And more people were doing training camps, and I don't see that hardly at all anymore. People aren't want either they can't or they don't have money or they're not being run. I don't know.
Yeah, that is
So
interesting.
yeah,
I know what you're talking about. It's like it's not a thing as
it's
much
not a
anymore.
thing.
I'm not sure what that's about.
Yeah. But I do think in our sport of triathlon, 7.3 Ironman, right? Like I do think there has been, and you've even seen it at the pro level, right? Like the individual, there has not been the group dynamics as much, and the Norwegians have obviously shown that that is very impactful, despite the fact that it's a very long race, and that's the other thing, right? Like it's Ironman, it's a long race, you're all time trialing, but it's like but when you have that level of fitness, there are dynamics and there are plays and there are risks that you're taking and strategies that you're employing for sure. So
Yeah, at that
my
level.
only yeah,
No,
my
go
only
ahead.
I'm not a group person, right? Like I do these sports because I like to be alone. I was, I
Yeah.
mean, soccer was my main passion and I did play, team. That's a team sport. And so I could do both, but in my adult life, I have chosen to do sports that I don't want to train with the group. I think I've mentioned this on other podcasts. When people would ask me to go train with them, I would make up excuses 99% of the time. I don't like So there's two things. One, it's just that I'm doing this because I like the solitude. I enjoy it. I would rather have my own routes and do my own thing and train at my efforts, harder, easier, whatever it might be on the day. And I also feel that when I was training a lot in Boulder County, a lot of the groups it was go out and crush yourself every day. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole culture is it's a in the workout, race the workout, harder, faster, more. It was a constant proving. And so even if you could find a group that was a little better, right, it was still, it wasn't fun. I have enough stress in my life with my job, with its job, right? Trying to win proposals and write grants. And I don't need to, I don't need to do that in my training. And I want to save that energy for the race course. And that worked well for me. However, I work with a ton of athletes that prefer to train in groups and they want the group dynamics, but they do not use it in the ways that I am sure the Norwegians are using it. And there is always comments about like so and so, or I didn't ride well, or I didn't do this comparison. The comparison game. Every workout is a comparison, and I'm like, if you just go do the training on your own, oh, but I don't like that. They like the group dynamics, and in some ways, I think they like that constant, you know, feedback and judgment that they are placing on themselves by how they are comparing to other people on the day. My
Hmm.
2 cents, it's a very rare person that actually can enjoy the group ride and leave it as, I enjoy the group, I'm having fun, I'm getting a little more out of myself on occasion, but most of the
Well,
time it's
but
comparison.
I think that the issue there too then is largely along the lines of like, are you training together 7 days a week, or are you only going in, right? So like I would say most age group athlete, like there's no age group athlete that's doing all of their training like with a training group. There's like none really.
Right.
Or
No.
if
Yeah.
you are, you're only like, okay, I only swim masters, but like, and I'm going to masters twice a week, so I'm always swimming with that group. Okay, fine. But you're not all doing the same thing in between, right? You know what I mean? So like there would be some people are bringing more fatigue into the session and some people are bringing less. And then like
Right.
the
Right.
chances of you overtraining. So it's almost like if you're going to be effective with the group and the group is going to work for you the way that these Norwegians have done it, like the only way is to do it 7 days a week,
Right. I
right?
agree.
And to totally understand the physiology behind what you're doing,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
goal of this session, the letting go of the ego and letting yourself go easy on the easy days, holding each other accountable to like, this is our top level effort and speed, right? Like on a certain session or whatever, that like we're not going above this today. And that if like one of your training partners says that you just let them go because you know that that doesn't fit. And so in a big group, like if you go for a group ride where everybody's coming sort of with their own agenda and their own goals and their own, and so because they did cop some criticism in the beginning of the year that all three of those guys were doing all the same races, right? Like they all went to this, they had the same race schedule. And, anybody who's strategic is like, why would you do that? Then you have to compete against each other. Like, why wouldn't you spread it out and like
But it was
send one of you, to each of these races and then you guys can just go win and you don't have to compete against each other. But I think they were like largely trying to coordinate their training schedules so that they could peak, like at the
Yep.
right time.
Yeah.
And so I would like the caveats on the group training thing. So you bring up a really good point about like, there's benefits to training alone. I personally, I do the vast majority of pretty much all of it. I mean, occasionally I'll do group bike rides with people on the weekends, but like, I don't call myself really training. Like I'm exercising, but anyway, it's beside the point. But I do a lot of it alone. And when I'm going with the group, I just assume that it's going to be hard,
Hmm.
right? Because like that's just going to be the dynamic of when I'm in a group situation, like I'm going to be pushing harder than I would on my own most of the time. So so I don't know, warn is the right word, but to just bring your awareness to like if you watch that race over the weekend and you're like, see, group training is the way, group training is what it takes. Like, know like all the caveats that go into that, and that like there are absolute benefits to group training, like for sure, as long as your training partners are about the same fitness level as you, have the same goals as you, are able to put their egos away when it matters. And like,
Right.
so they push when it's time to push, they go easier when it's time to go easier. Like they understand all of that. They see the big picture. I mean, all year, Gustav, even like I love Gustav. Like
Yeah. Right.
I
Yeah.
wanted Gustav to win that race. Like just the whole time I've been cheering for him for years. And he kept saying like I'm progressing my season to be ready for Nice. And so like when he didn't perform that well, like in Texas or in Frankfurt was like a step up, and he just continually was getting better. He's like, I'm on the path. I don't want to peak in April or May, right? I'm going to peak in September. And he had that plan for years. And so it's like he just was gradually building up. And then you even heard Christian saying, like in the pre-race interviews, that yeah, like Gustav has been getting faster like every week. His sessions are getting like a little faster, a little faster. And I wanted to see him win partly because I just thought like I wanted to see that smart, like progressive
Yeah.
training load
Of
pay
course.
off, because it's like
Yeah.
I like that like as a coach.
Yeah. The plan works, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Is to go like, oh, he was patient through this whole thing, and he wasn't trying to hold top end fitness all year versus like Christian kind of was, right? And so like, so while Christian ran in 2:34 at that marathon, that was his slowest Ironman marathon of the year, right? So like he ran faster in Texas and in Frankfurt than he did at Nice. And like there, and like, look, we're not bashing him for getting third, but like there is something to be said for, building your way through and not being at top level fitness in April, right? If your goal is to win a world championship or even just to like be your best, in September, October, you kind of don't want to be at your peak fitness in April. So
Right.
anyway,
And yeah, and what these guys, yeah, in full disclosure for our listeners, I did not get a chance to watch the race, so I'm mostly living vicariously through Michelle's storytelling of it, which is amazing. But I presume, knowing these guys, like they are very good. They understand the physiology, right? And they execute sessions very well, and they're not looking to be at their top fitness across multiple disciplines. And that I see that a lot with a lot of athletes, to be honest. Like especially in Ironman training. Well, I want to jump into a 5K and oh my God, my 5K time is a little slower than normal. It's like, yeah, well, that's because it's a different physiology to do well at a 5K than an Ironman. And so, but that I think, and maybe that's on me for not, I think I do, I educate, like
yeah, but
it's a,
even if you do,
right.
I have been in that
You did
situation too,
too,
like
right?
super
Like,
frustrated that my
I
5K
mean,
is slower than it should be when I'm in the middle of Ironman build.
right, but it's
Yeah.
like, that you can't train you cannot be good. Like a sprinter is not going to be the best marathoner and vice versa, right? Like because there's genetics involved, but also, they are training differently and that training should be tailored to what your goal race is or your goal whatever it is, right? Like to get faster on the bike or to get whatever your goal is. Like you can mix and match, right, in different parts of your season to focus on different things like top speed, VO2 max, whatever it is. But once you enter into like kind of the bulk of what you need to prepare for your event, then that's the priority. And so that I feel like some athletes have a hard time wrapping their minds around that because they think that Ironman training is just it's so much training. So overall my fitness should be amazing at everything. And I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily work that way. It might. I mean, you might get a 5K PR, right? You're more likely, what I've seen, you're more likely to get a marathon PR because a marathon is more similar in the event to Ironman versus, 5K. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. So yeah, I think, well, yeah, I think, one understanding like, yes, group training is amazing, right? And there are benefits. Pick and choose, I think when my athletes want to, so right now I have someone that group rides 3 times a week. And I don't think he'll listen to this. So yeah, he group rides 3 times a week. I try to encourage like one ride to be a little easier at least. Well, and then he now wants to add in like whole body strength session Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to feel like you have to prioritize something, right? Like you can go hard in the strength room and then Tuesday your legs are going to feel like shit, right? Like you can ride easy. It would be good for recovery to ride easy, but they want to still join the group ride. I'm like, well, you just have to be ready. And lo and behold, like the first time we applied this. Monday, hard strength workout. Tuesday, legs feel like shit. And I'm like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know what to tell you. So anyways, back to the group ride, right? Like it's finding people that are about your speed. In the big group rides, you just can't. There's a variety, of people most likely. And so you might get out of your comfort zone a bit.
Oh,
I
in a
think,
group ride, there's always going to be
yeah,
somebody who pushes it, even if
right,
everybody decides in the
right,
beginning that we're really tired. And the thing is, and it might even be easy for the whole first hour, but there's going to be one person in the group that just decides, like, oh, I always push on that hill or
right.
whatever, right? Like, this is my section where I always push in, like, and yeah, they'll go for it. And then, like, then you get people like me who are like, I'm not the one pushing the pace, but like you, there's no chance I'm going to let you go when you start, right? And I'm going to jump in. And then if I go, then like somebody else is going to go. And now, but before we know it, the whole train's moving down the road and now you're working harder than you plan to. But, and that's my point, is that like, if you're going to go with the group, then plan on it being a solid effort. Like, don't pretend that it's going to be like an easy recovery kind of ride
Yeah, it's
when
not.
you know that it's not going to be. So yeah.
I've commonly seen this too with some of my athletes, and this is no one I'm coaching currently, but love the group rides, wanted a group ride Saturday, like to ride hard in the Ironman training. I look at his training peaks, and he had, like, for example, a 5 hour ride, mostly aerobic, maybe a few efforts. See, at 2:30, 2 hours and 30 minutes, because they hammered it. And the rest of the group was only riding 2.5 hours, and he was too tired to continue on.
Yeah.
And this is not, he knew it, right? Like, his upload, when he did comment, he was like, yeah, coach, okay, I'm sorry. I probably can't do this anymore. I'm like, no, you really do. You really do need to get some miles in, so, I don't find an easier group to ride with for a bit, or just try to do your own thing. You signed up for Ironman, right? Like, you need to do some longer rides. And
Yeah.
then once Ironman's over, go back to your group rides and hammer it on a Saturday for 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
But I see
Yeah.
that a lot, right? The group doesn't usually do 5 hours, unless you're in Boulder, right? And there's a lot of Ironman people, but
Well,
most places they're,
and so this is
yeah,
this is the whole point, is that like the reason that the group training with the Norwegians works is because they're all aiming toward the same
right.
goal, right? And they're all on the same page. And the vast majority of groups that like
Yeah, they're
we
just,
work with, like everybody is coming with their own purpose, coming with their own goals, coming with their own levels of fatigue, coming with their own understanding of physiology, coming with their own fueling plan.
right.
The chances of everybody like progressing in the same way are like so slim. Like, so it like the group dynamic isn't going to work as well. But
Yeah,
what I took away more so than even like the group training was the cultural dynamic that allowed those guys to be so genuinely happy for each other in a way that like I'm really hard pressed to. I mean, there are a couple other athletes that I think could do professional level. I'm talking like at the world class. I mean, because this is like we're fighting, we're duking it out. I mean, like, so Mikki, I really like you, but if you and I were duking it out to be world champion, and like we kind of knew that it's going to be you or me, like, well, I could say, well, if it's not going to be me, then I hope it's Mikki. But like, oh my God, I don't know how happy I would be like if you won and I lost. I just don't know if I'm that gracious. Like, I wish I was, but like, I'm not sure that I am. And I think that that's something that is like cultural. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, it's a cultural thing where, like, because I actually then went and did like some research on like Nordic culture because I really wanted to understand. Like, I have a large curiosity about things that I don't understand, and like watching how awesome they were together and like listening within, I don't know, an hour, hour and a half of the race. Like, they're still in their tri suits. Like, it's that soon after the race. Those three guys are sitting down in a conference room with microphones in front of their mouths, shoulder to shoulder, going through the race dynamics and talking about, like, with a guy who's interviewing them, talking about what they were thinking and when they made their move and why they made it and why they were trying. And they were all just like watching each other all day and saying, I try to do this because they weren't racing against Sam Laidlow and Martin Van Riel and the other guys. They were racing against each other even in that race. But then like the second that it's over, they bury all that and hug each other in like the most authentic way that I just think like it's very real. Like the respect that, like, and maybe that's the thing. Maybe when you work that hard together for so long, you can't help but have just enormous respect for, the others, knowing that like, if I've worked this hard to get here, like you have too, or whatever. At one point, Casper said something like he was in a marathon, he was running with Christian and Gustav started falling back. Christian told Casper to lead, and Casper didn't want to lead because there was a headwind. So like there was half the run, there was a headwind section, and Casper wanted Christian to lead. And this is his thought process. And he says afterward, he's like, well, he goes, I thought about telling Christian that he had to lead. And he goes, but Christian led like almost all of our training. So like, I kind of felt guilty being like, no, you should also like lead this race. And then Christian said, hey, we have a gap on Gustav. If I'm leading, Gustav might catch back up and then you're going to have to drop Gustav again. So you better just stay in front. So Casper was like, okay, I guess I'm just staying in front because like if Christian goes in front and slows down at all, then Gustav's going to catch back up and we have to make sure that Gustav doesn't catch back up. But it's almost like they're doing that like because they have so much respect for Gustav, right? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, I know I have to work absolutely as hard as I can because he's so good. And so in order for me to beat him, like I have to actually, just like be outside of myself. And I don't know. I just thought it was culturally, it made me wish that I was Nordic,
Yeah. I mean, I do think
and like,
there's definitely cultural differences. I also think, Christian and Gustav they've been trained together for what years now. I think this is also a demonstration of, so I'm not going to take anything away the Nordic culture, but it also might just be that these guys really get along. I mean, that's also,
mhm.
like it's maybe a very unique situation. I don't know. I'm not discrediting the fact that I just don't know enough to say like, I mean, generally, yes, Norwegian cultures tend to be more team, group and team oriented than the highly individualistic Americans, American culture, and
Yeah,
I don't know where, how well I do. I mean, history of American culture is like, Puritan. So, they're groups, but fairly judgmental. Sorry. Yeah. So there could be that, but yeah, I think it's a case of knowing your opponents very, very well, but knowing, respecting, wanting to get the most out of yourself and each other. And I think that is definitely, not something you see. I mean, it's pretty rare, right? In
yeah,
our, I
it
think in
is
our
rare.
culture. Yeah.
I think it's really neat. So if we move on a little bit, another takeaway that I had that I feel like, because again, the way that we started this was like, what can we learn
Hmm.
from, these watching what these pros did? And there were a couple of stories in the day of like early adversity that some of these pros had that they then overcame and ended up with a result that they could be really proud of. And so I'm not really sure exactly what happened to Sam Laidlow, but like, Sam Laidlow has like led the swim, or if he hasn't been first, he's been, yeah, if he hasn't been first, he's been like, first, second, maybe third worst out of the water at every race he goes to. Like he's an incredible swimmer. And there was a time during the swim where Sam Laidlow just stopped swimming and actually took a few strokes, like going back to shore, like he was going to quit the race halfway through. And so when he wasn't in that front group swimming, it's like it was very confusing, I think, to a lot of the other top athletes. A lot of them didn't even know. And when they heard on the bike that Sam's like 2 minutes back early on the bike, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I will tell you, I definitely thought Sam Laidlow's out. Right. I mean, I thought looking at his eyes running through transition, I thought he's going to drop out. So Sam Laidlow's not my favorite athlete for a variety of reasons. Like I don't like, I don't know. I don't find myself cheering for him. But in this case, oh my gosh, like kudos to that guy for not giving up on himself. He stayed in it. It took him a long time. He was working really hard at one point. He caught sort of like the first chase group, like where there were still three guys out front on their own. Then he never had more than maybe 2 minutes on the rest of the group. And then, Sam caught that first group and he sat in for a little bit, and then he made his surge and he got himself to the front of the race. And like he entered, I think there were maybe, five or six guys that entered T2 together, and he was one of them. But given where he started, you would go, my gosh, and then for a while he was running in the lead. Like he and Martin Van Riel were first out onto the run, and they're running in the lead of this race, being chased by three Norwegians. It's just like, there's a bad omen there. But I just think that, wow, like kudos to that guy for giving himself a chance like the whole time. The other person, Matt Marquardt, was like the first American to cross the line. He was eighth. Same to him. And his post race, like he put on Instagram or whatever, that his his mantra for the day was like, give yourself a chance, give yourself a chance. So like that's a guy he's been dealing with cramps. Like every time he gets out of the water, he has a cramp and it puts him back like 5 or 6 minutes while he's like waiting for the cramp to work. And then it works itself out. Then he gets on the bike and he's an incredible bike runner. And he's won 2 Ironmans this year, even having cramps, which is like, so for him, he has experience knowing that I have the capacity to work through this. But you would think like, oh, in an Ironman World Championships race, like in a field like this kind of caliber field, like if you're going to be back, losing time due to a cramp, like you don't have a chance with these guys. But like he apparently he didn't cramp getting out of the water. And so when I saw that he like got on the bike, like he swims really well, like front pack swimmer. And when he got on the bike with the other guys, who he swam with, I was like, oh, good for him, right? But then like the first split came up and now he's 4 minutes back. And you're like, oh, shoot, man. He's like, so he's still cramped, but it was later. And so you would think that he would have had some sort of like, cool, I didn't cramp, right? Like an exciting feeling of like, oh, I'm in it, like right from the beginning, like I'm going to give myself a chance. But then like he has some sort of cramp like early on that like slowed him way down. And you can only imagine how frustrating that's got to be, like knowing that you have the fitness, you have the knowledge, you have all the things and like that you can't figure out. Cramping is literally the most frustrating condition for any athlete to be in. And I know like I've been in I've coached athletes through it. It's so frustrating. But the fact that he continued to give himself a chance where, and it cost him maybe 4 minutes. And then like he said by, I don't know, 20K or something, he's like, I was back in, I had all my functioning capacity. And then he crashed apparently on the bike at some point. He was like 100K in and he showed like pictures of like strawberries. He landed like pretty hard on his hip and he had like cuts on his hand. And so he crashed on the bike, got himself back up on the bike and then like continues on. Apparently Jamie Riddle crashed as well. Or at least he like ran himself off the road. And there's video of this where like I think those downhills are like, they're so fast and they're curvy. And if you misjudge one, right, it's really easy to just ride like right off the road. So I mean, and they're pushing the boundaries on like, how fast can I get down this mountain? It's not like super surprising. I mean, even Cam Worth crashed like 2 years ago. But anyway, so I'm not sure if those were the only two that crashed. They were the only two I heard about. But it's like with a cramp and a crash. And Matt Marquardt was like, I'm not giving up on myself. I'm going to continue battling on and to go run a 240 marathon and run your way into 8th place. You know what? Congratulations, Matt. Like, thank you for setting this example of like, things can look like they're all going to shit multiple times for different reasons throughout the race. And then you're just like, you run into a problem, you fix it, and you move on. And then the other kudos I want to give is to Patrick Lange, who like, here's a guy who 2 years ago on this course, he was second overall. Last year, he won the race. And there would have been a lot of pressure on him, like going into the race. But like he came off the bike, I think like in 27th place, like 20 minutes down or something, right? Where it's just like, I mean, he could have run a 220 marathon. He still wasn't going to be top 5. Like it was, he was out of it. And you have to imagine this mindset of like, I'm a world champion and how hard that is. So you and I talk about this a lot. And like, this can be our next talking point about what is it like to get older and not be the same athlete that you were before, right? And even when we're talking about it, we're not even talking about it from the standpoint of like, I'm the best in the whole world. We're just like, I just know how fast I used to be and how frustrating it is when I'm not that fast anymore. So here is a world champion on the world stage. He comes off the bike like 27th place, completely out of the race. That guy went and ran a 2:31 to run his way into 9th. And you have to imagine the whole time he's still like super frustrated. So even though you're like passing all these people and you're running really well, he has the second fastest run split of the whole day, which is great. But like for nothing, I mean, he's maybe making a little bit of money, but for like, for a past world champion, this isn't like, he's not going to get a sponsor bonus for being in 9th. And so like the idea that he could compartmentalize like that and not spend that whole marathon beating himself up about how he's not as fast as he used to be. And he can just put that away and do the run that he was trained to do. And like, I heard somebody say on another podcast too, which I really agreed with, like, probably as frustrated as he must have been during that race. Like, there's no way that he wasn't just super frustrated. But like a year from now, he will look back on that race and be so proud of himself for like not giving up on himself, for putting in the effort, for just continuing to give everything he had, even if he retires now, which he might, right? He might just be like, oh, you know what? Like the game has passed. Like what these guys can do on the bike is ridiculous. I don't know if he retires or not, but if he does, congratulations. Thank you for like offering us this example of resilience. It was beautiful. We didn't even get to watch him. Like he was like pretty much never on camera, but I'm like just really, that's a champion mindset, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. He is a champion, and it's something again thinking maybe from a psychological point of view or a cultural point of view. Like, is that something he's developed over the years? Was that inherent in him, right? Like, can other people develop that champion's mindset? I think the answer is well, one, the answer is I don't know for him, right? Like I don't, I think there are people that have that more inherently than others. I think that you can develop it a bit too, though. But I think, for example, I have an athlete, her name's Meg, and I don't think she'll care if I share the story. She was very, very fit for Ironman Copenhagen a couple weeks ago. Really good build. She really did everything, not just hitting the training, but like setting time aside to recover, right? Like she was mindful of nutrition, recovery. I mean, she was doing all the things. She was prioritizing, her time to give herself the best opportunity she could. And, while Kona was not like a super high goal, it was like she's in a position where she might crack in, right? Like it's not, I mean, it's never a given, but like she's in that range of like, it might happen, right? It could happen if she has a really good race, if everything goes really well. Well, it didn't go well. She got a flat on the bike, didn't hold, flatted again, flatted again. I mean, she lost about an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half on the bike, like quite a bit. And of course, she got low on nutrition during that time. She was super stressed. And, I was chatting on the side actually with her sister. I don't know if she knows this. I don't think she's gonna listen to this, but like, does she pull out? Does she, and I told her sister and I said, I think knowing Meg, I think she's gonna put it behind her. We talked about what happens when things don't go the way we're expecting them to go. We have setbacks. It's on to the next thing. Like we stay present and then we move on, we let it go. And I think I would encourage her to do that. And of course she did that, right? She didn't need her, yeah, anyone, right, to tell her. I mean, she got out in the marathon and she ran a fantastic marathon. Can't remember what she got off the bike in, but ran her way up by, I don't know, 20 places, right? I think she was just in the top 20 at that point. Sub 4 hour by I'm gonna blank on what her times were, but very impressive, very steady marathon. Dealt with, she got off the bike knowing like I'm probably low on calories, and so she kept fueling. When fueling didn't go well, she switched it up to something else because it's like, we had that worked out. But it was the mindset that I was so super, proud of. I mean, and I told her, I think it's the races that go really well. That might be like yay, it went really well, and what was really easy. In some ways, you don't maybe always remember those, right? You remember the hard races where you had to fight for it and you had to overcome, right? And I said, and again, that's a champion's mindset, and to keep showing up when it's not going well, when you're not, when you're dealing with the setbacks. And so, I think there's a lot that we can learn from the pro races too, for those pros that, yeah, had, Sam Laidlow and Patrick Legrand, running. He got off on 20 and ran up to ninth.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. He's an amazing runner, but being a world champion. Yeah. I think
I mean,
that's,
to pull out a 2:31,
yeah.
like that takes a lot of like guts and effort, right? Like, cause it's not going to be easy to do that, right? Like that's like your best effort marathon. Like, I'm sure it was like, that was his best effort marathon. So to be giving, like, I think to your point, or like what you were trying to say is like on the easy days, like it's kind of easy to give your best effort when it's going well, right? To give your best effort when it's not going well is a totally different ball game. And so, yeah, I feel like that just was like just really impressive to me, that he did that. And
I mean, because you do see athletes, and I'm not going to name any names, right? At the pro level, and you see a lot of age group athletes that if it's not going their way, they didn't have the bike they wanted, they didn't have, and well, like they just, it's like if they
you
don't have,
jog it in, or you
they
just feel
jog it
like
in,
it's not,
or they
yeah.
just pull out, right? Just like, well, it just wasn't my day. And I'm like, I could not. That wasn't me. I couldn't do that. I mean, you have to drag. I would have pulled out of a race for serious health. If you cannot get puking under control, if you are passing out, you should not subject. Like long-term health is very important. I try to encourage that from like, do not do anything that's going to literally affect your long-term health, whether that's fracturing your foot, right? Because you're running on a stress fracture, I've seen that, to, serious heat exhaustion and there's long-term effects from that. It's not about how much pain you can endure, right? Like you got to be a little bit smart about when to push your limits and when to know when it's time to step away. But if it's just not going well and you don't think you're going to get the placement you were expected or the time you were expecting, then like you should finish the freaking race, give it what you got.
Well, and because I think what happens is like later you're going to look back on that. And like the whole point of amateur triathlon is like, I'm trying to make myself proud. Right. Like I like, that's what it's all about. Like, am I proud of myself at the end? And so like, and the only way that you're proud of yourself at the end is if like you gave your best effort, and like whatever the result was, you will forget the result, but like you'll remember your effort, and you'll remember how
Yeah.
you felt about yourself, and you'll remember like what you were telling yourself, all of that.
Yeah,
Anyway, one final
absolutely.
thing that I want to talk about from another athlete from the World Championships, Martin Van Riel. So like this guy from like in January, there are people who are like Martin Van Riel wins this race, right? Like he's and I kind of thought maybe he would too. I was like, I'm a big fan of Martin Van Riel. I like him. I think he's fun. I think he's funny. I think he's talented. I enjoy him. So then he sprained his ankle in a really bad way, like, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks out, to the point where he didn't run. I think it was like 8 weeks out. He sprained it really bad. He didn't run for like 5 weeks. So he was devastated that he's like, I'm not going to be able to do this. But he swam and biked a lot when he couldn't run. And in my mind, I'm thinking, he might be able to do this because like we've seen it in the past that like if you're a good runner and you're really fit on the swim and the bike and you didn't have the run preparation that you wanted, as long as you have done the run training at some point before. So like, I don't think this counts for like somebody who's like never run well or like never run a marathon or just isn't like already a good runner. But like if at some point in your past, you've been a good runner, but you didn't have the build that you wanted that one particular time. If your swim and bike are really strong, like we've seen Tim O'Donnell pulled that off. I feel like there's some women who have pulled that off too at world championships, like just done really well on limited run trainings. I kind of thought, I bet Martin Van Riel is going to have a really good race. And sure enough, he comes off the bike, like he led pretty much the whole bike. And he came off into T2, like in the lead, but with the whole train of guys behind him. But he shared his stats on Instagram. So he ended up running like a 240 marathon, landed fourth. He was in fifth most of the day, but he caught Sam Laidlow kind of toward the end, which tells you that like he never gave up. He was still trying to like get to fourth, even when he was fifth and not going to be on the podium. But he shared his stats, Mikki. I about lost my mind. Okay, so he swam like 45, which they called 111 per 100-meter pace, no wetsuit, in the ocean. Okay. Then like he averaged 301 watts on the bike for 4.5 hours. Do you want to just guess what his average heart rate was? So like 301 watts for 4.5 hours, average heart rate
130.
130. It was 130. Yeah, his heart rate was 130 for 301 watts. And then
Impressive.
he goes and he runs a 240 marathon, and his heart rate average was 126. And so people asked, and so this is a really telling point because someone asked, and I've seen this a lot. I've seen it with some athletes that I have coached where their average heart rate on the bike is higher than their average heart rate on the run. And the answer to that, because somebody asked us like in the comments, why was your average heart rate on the run lower than your average heart rate on the bike? And Martin answered that question. He said, because I didn't have the muscular endurance to run the pace that I wanted to run. So like his muscles weren't working hard enough to elicit a heart that needed to beat any harder. He was limited by his like muscular endurance capacity, like at that level. It wasn't cardiovascular capacity that was limiting him in any way. And that makes a lot of sense too. Because like when we get super tired, like when you have so much muscular breakdown that you can't like hold the pace anymore. And that was his point, was that he didn't get to do like the run sessions where he is like pushing pace in a way that would work him muscularly. And so if we're going to talk about that for like Ironman athletes and like amateur athletes, you go, when you're watching these guys pushing the pace that they're pushing on the run, pushing the power that they're pushing on the bike, what you have to know is that their aerobic capacity is developed to such a high level that it is never their limiter. So like when they're not worried about heart rate, it's because their heart rate is not their limiter. And so like, and then somebody else asked in the comments, like, what's your max heart rate? And he said 160-ish. So like, this is a guy who's operating 30 beats below his max heart rate. So like, even if your max heart rate, you're younger and it goes up to 180, like hypothetically, there's a lot of age group athletes that can get a heart rate up to 180. But now we're saying that like, yeah, so 150, like that's about where you're going to be for your Ironman. And so if you're all the time training with your heart rate at 165, 170, and that feels comfortable to you and you're calling that easy, like it's the cardiovascular capacity is not there then. So you're getting the muscular work done because your muscles are also working hard, but so is your like cardiovascular system. So seeing that like average heart rate 130, 126, I mean, I was like, okay, that is so telling. So telling that like this is where those guys are as far as fitness goes.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense because he didn't have to keep breaking down. Got
Yeah,
rain coming
I
down.
can
You
like
can hear
hear
it.
your rain. I
I
can hear
know.
your rain,
I'm
Mikki.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Colorado weather.
But it's a huge deal, right? Training the muscular and training the aerobic capacity as well. Man, on you. You continue on.
Yeah, like Mikki lives like in Colorado, and it's apparently hailing like golf balls onto a roof so loud we can't even hear it talk. But yeah, I mean, to me, that was just it was so telling, and with the idea being that it's not like we don't want to work the muscular endurance part, like that obviously is still an important piece. Like, but know that whenever you're working interval efforts where you're working in a way that you can feel your muscles like fatiguing, if your heart rate is above like, and it's hard to throw out a number here because like it does vary by individuals, but it's rare that you're going to have a professional athlete who's doing that whole race at above like about 150. And even then, when you look at like age group athletes, like your average heart rate for the race, if it's within like 20 beats of your max, I can almost guarantee you, I'd be really surprised. And listen, if you're one of those athletes and you can prove me wrong on this, like, great, do it. Show me your data. I'd love to see it. But like, if you're going to have a good last 10K of the marathon, of your Ironman, and you've been doing the bulk of the race at 20 beats below your max, like I would be really surprised and flabbergasted and amazed if you're going to have a good last 10K of that marathon. Like it's just so unlikely to happen because you're working at the limits of your like aerobic endurance capacity at that point. And so to know that these professionals are so fit that heart rate isn't a limiter. And I'll just share with you personally, like as a coach, how do I deal with this when I'm working with my athletes with heart rate? I used to be a lot more stickler about heart rate than I have been recently. But this is what I'll say is that when I get a new athlete, I will say, I want to see your heart rate and I want to see good heart rate data, not from the wrist, but like from a heart rate strap. I want to see good heart rate data. And what I'll tell them is that like heart rate may or may not be an issue for you. Like, are we going to do all your training by heart rate? I don't know. When, you know, in our first initial phone conversation, I don't know. It depends on where you're at right now. But I will tell you, if you do 2 weeks of training and upload all of your data for me, I'll be able to tell you if we're going to do a lot of heart rate training or not. And the way that I'll know that is that like if you're running like 9-minute pace and your heart rate's 165, we're going to do a lot of heart rate training. Right. Like, and I'm going to ask you to run a lot slower than you're capable of running because like that, especially if your goals are to go long, it's not going to be a sustainable thing for you to run by pace yet. right? Like the first thing we're going to have to do is like develop your aerobic system so that you can then handle the harder efforts later. But then I've had athletes that I've worked with, and it's like they'll say that like this was a really hard solid session, and their heart rate for the intervals was 142. And you're like, for this athlete, like I'm not going to be like you have to slow way down. Like that athlete can probably um run easy by feel, and they're probably going to be fine running easy by feel if their interval reps are run at a heart rate of 142. Right, like
Assuming
assuming that
not.
they're not 65.
Right. I was gonna say, assuming they're sort of like 20s, 30s, 40s ish,
Right,
right?
yeah, if
But
you're in your 30s and you're doing intervals and your heart rate's like under 145, like for you, heart rate is your cardiovascular system is really well developed. You might have a really big heart. I mean, there are genetic issues with this too, right? If you have a really big heart and you can pump lots of blood. But I've seen this as a pattern with my athletes that those whose heart rates just generally run on the lower end tend to do better at Ironman than athletes who have like hummingbird hearts who like if I go out and run and my average heart rate's 175 for that 5 mile run, like that athlete has a lot of work to do before they're going to be able to like finish an Ironman in a way that felt good to them.
right. And a lot of folks that are out there saying, well, it just doesn't work for me, or, yeah, my heart rate just naturally runs high and I feel fine. Okay, that might be true. But again, like what's your goal? And I do look at like, well, if you're easy, 170 is my easy pace, and your max heart rate's only like 175, 179,
Even 182, even
182. Yeah.
182.
I mean,
You're
so
still
yeah, for most of my Ironman training days, I think my max heart rate was around 200 on the run and like 190, 194 on the bike, like pretty similar. Not initially, right? Like I was a runner and I had to build up my cycling specific strength. Which is an aside, I think that's pretty common too. I've seen a lot, like what commonly see is, especially for women, but I think this applies to men too, that I just have worked with more women, so I have more data. But as if they come from run background, they are more likely to have quite a large disparity in heart rates on the bike versus the run, heart rate being very low on the bike because they haven't developed the necessary muscular endurance. They haven't developed the cycling muscles to be able to push the effort to get the heart rate up, right? I mean, maybe for short time periods, but not for sustained long efforts. But as they get fitter on the bike and build more bike specific strength, then the run and the bike tend to become pretty close. Usually about 5 beats slower on the bike for the same perceived effort, same zone effort, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, in my Ironman
I've
days,
seen that too, by the
yeah,
way, like for
yeah,
sure. Like if you're new at the bike and your heart rate, you like can't even get it up. You're like
yeah,
150 is really hard on the
really
bike,
hard.
but you can run at 165 all day long.
Right.
Like that
Yeah.
is a dynamic I've seen too.
Yeah. But so in my Ironman days, I always raced at a heart rate of 155 on the bike and the run. And that was around my what we target as my maximum aerobic function. Not for Phil Maffetone. And then years later, actually, I think I've mentioned this on other podcasts. I got my metabolic efficiency tested, and it was very similar. Even though my gut feeling is actually it was probably higher when I was younger, and I didn't get my lab test done until I was 40. And it was still, I think my crossover was about 152, 153. And so like that's kind of, I mean, one, I had field data to say that that was at a good effort level for me because I made progress I went faster at that same heart rate over seasons and over years, right? And that's again with heart rate training, like I'm sure you do this too. Like we're not just putting a heart rate out there and saying, well, let's just have you run at 160. Like we're looking at like, are you getting better?
No,
Do
I
we
just
think this
wild
is
ass guess.
right? But I think a lot of people think that, well, that they're like, well, but my Garmin says that my zone 2 should be this. I'm like, oh no, okay, Garmin's crap. Let's actually have you run. This is what I do for new athletes is it depends. Will I force you to run by heart rate? And I was also much more of a stickler early on than I am now. Largely depends on what your goals are. And so if your goals are really only like half marathon, maybe a marathon, I maybe if not, it's not as important. But if your goals are to do ultras and to do 70.3s and above, Ironman especially, I am going to be much more of a stickler because we have to be. You have to develop the necessary aerobic capacity to do those events or to do them well. But yeah, if people go out and run and do everything by feel, what I commonly see is like they're not able to hold that. And so And then to make matters worse, if you add fueling issues on top of it, then you're really not going to be able to hold that effort.
So that was the other data point that like Martin talked about was like how much did he fuel? I can't remember. I think he said it was 140 grams per hour on the bike. Christian said it was 160 is what he took in. I mean, these guys are pushing the limits on fueling so high up. And then I can't remember now what he said it was on the run, but it might have been like 125 grams an hour on the run, which is incredible. And then somebody asked him, like, how did you do that? Like logistically, how did you do that? It seems like a lot. And he said that they had like a table for the pros where they had their own bottles and gels and stuff. And he said every time he ran by, he picked up 2 gels and then he had like a bottle like of himself. And you saw Casper had that too. Like he had a special tri suit that looked like he could put the bottle sort of like at his waist and then sort of zip up. And so it could sit there. So I don't know if his tri suit was developed in a way where it had like a special pouch, like that you could put. Casper was carrying a full size bottle, like a big bike bottle. And it was full of a pink liquid, like, because it was clear. So you could see that there was like a pink liquid. So clearly high carb, electrolytes, whatever was in there, it was some sort of special fuel that he would drink. He would take it out, drink it whenever he wanted. And then he would stick it back in, like sort of like horizontally across his waist and sort of like zip up. So it looked like he was running like sort of pregnant almost, if he had this like bulge, like around his belly button. But like those guys were absolutely pushing the limits on the fueling. And I keep trying to drill this in with my athletes. And I think
Yeah.
some of them like don't believe me or they think that what they're doing is enough. And like, like maybe it is, but like, what if you just tried? What if you
I
just
know.
tried more? Can you just try? Like try more and see if it helps.
How
Like
you
even if
feel.
you think you're okay, like what happens if you try more? What happens the next day? Do you have
That's a
less
big one.
fatigue the
Yes.
next day that you can like train again and not be like still catching up? And
Yeah. That's
I think
huge.
that those guys embrace like how much can I fuel now? And most age group athletes are like, but I'm trying to lose weight. So
Right.
like, they don't want to fuel the training as much because they want to use it as like a weight loss effort. When the reality is if you trained your fueling really well, you wouldn't be starving later and
And not
need to like eat
overeating
a lot
later.
more. And then you could train more and train better. So yeah, I don't think that like we are pushing the power because again, if you're not pushing 300 watts, you're not going to be using as much energy, right? But you're still going to be using a lot. And so like the more is more
Yeah.
on
And
that.
if you're on, and I know we've talked about this in another podcast too, I'm sure, but if you're on the spectrum of like, well, I just don't need that much, go get metabolic efficiency testing done to see what you actually burn. Now that's in a lab and there's not as much, it's not always clear how your caloric needs drift over 10 hours. I mean, 10-hour Ironman would be fantastic, right? Like most of my athletes probably right now are between like 11 and, 15, 16 hours. It's a long time to be out there working out. But if you go test in the lab, you can get a good baseline to say, well, I at least need this to be able to sustain my effort. And, it's not just testing aerobic efforts, it's testing up into, zone 3, into low threshold. Metabolic efficiency testing usually doesn't go to full VO2 max, high effort, right? But race specific intensities. And they can even tailor tests where if you go in and say, I want to race at I'm going to target 9 minutes a mile and I'm going to target, 200 watts on the bike. Okay, go get on the bike, warm up, ride 200 watts for, 45 minutes. Let's see how many calories you burn. Now, can you get that amount of calories in? And so a lot of times people will see that data and say, okay, maybe I need to dial it back because I actually can't get in 150 carbs an hour. Maybe you can, but I think a lot of times people have to see it's not even that they fail at the races because they're still in this whatever it is culturally maybe, right? Like it's not the nutrition, it's my fitness and I just have to work harder, right? That's why they're failing or that's why they're not meeting the mark at the races, right? Whereas if you show someone the data, like this is what you're actually burning right now, if you're not willing to trial and error it, which is a much cheaper way of going about this, right? Just trial and error it. Anyways, and I
We've
have
seen that like people don't listen to data and facts anyway. Nikki, have you
well,
not been
this is
paying attention?
it's true.
Facts, do they even matter? Like we're in a post-fact society at this point. So like
Post facts is oh
data,
my God.
like I know
This is
you're
so
into science, Mickey, and that voodoo science that you're
I
into with
know.
the
Oh my
data that
God.
you always,
My
you and your
God.
facts.
This pains me. I mean, it's funny, not really funny. Haha, I'm gonna cry now, but yeah,
Yeah.
we get it. Anywho, no, I think, there's so much that age group athletes want to mimic about the pros. And I do think that some people are maybe taking the whole carb fueling a little extreme, right? Like, do you need to fuel like some of these guys are? maybe not because you're not pushing 300 watts. You're not as big as Sam Long, right? Like you're a, I don't know, 5'8" woman. Like maybe you don't need to have that many carbs, right? Like trial it. Like
You need more than 40 grams an hour. And
yes,
like the reality
yes,
is like when people, most of my athletes anyway, think that they're feeling well, if you actually go add it up and then like divide it by how many hours you were out there, it turns out to be like 40, 45 grams an hour. And they're like, no, I feel a lot. I feel a lot. And it feels like a lot. But then like do the math on it and you're like, it wasn't even in the ballpark. You didn't even hit the minimum of like the 60 to 90 grams an hour. You weren't even there. So like it's no surprise at all that you died on the run after the bike or that you retired the next day.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
doing math
That's
is important.
doing math is important.
I'm
And
into math.
yeah, I mean, in a great way. I mean, yes, I am into the data, and I think testings can be really useful. But for me, what was really maybe the field testing, right? Like, was I wrecked after long rides? No. Was I overeating after long rides? I mean, okay, sometimes I did crave a burrito, right? Like after a big long ride, but I was also recovering well. I mean, stacking the volume, stacking the hours. Are you getting injured? Are you getting sick? These things are also indicators. Like if you can't stack the training, if you're, or, and there are caveats, right? Like age dependencies, as we get older, we need more recovery probably. But, having a workout like an easy ride 4 hours and you're like, oh, I'm wrecked for four days afterwards. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but a lot of if you're really under fueling and you go out and ride in the heat, and you under hydrate as well. I mean, yeah, that's really hard on your body, really, really hard. So eat more. That's always
Yeah.
eat more in the sessions, right? If you're trying to lose weight, eat more in the sessions and then prioritize good choices later, right? A lot of protein. That's usually
Yeah.
my guidance. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway,
Anywho,
so
what else?
let's
You got
let's
anything
call it
else?
there. No, I
Yeah,
I feel like we've been going for like 75 minutes, so like let's call it there. I feel like it was a really good race. I'm sorry that Americans didn't get to watch it. If you don't have a VPN, that blows. But get a VPN.
for lots of reasons.
That would be my recommendation. Yeah. So now, and it makes me really excited for Kona because, like, oh my God, the women's race is going to be incredible. Right. I
I
mean,
am,
like, if
yes,
there were seven guys that could have won that race, there are also seven women that, or at least five that could be like legit, they'd win and we're not surprised, but maybe seven that are,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
really, really incredible athletes. And so like that's also going to be really fun. So I think I haven't decided yet. Like I usually go over and watch, but
yeah.
last year I stayed here and I watched online and honestly like it was like better.
Oh,
I knew more about what was going on in the race than I did when I was like over there in person. I haven't bought any, I don't have any plans to go. I'll probably stay here. I have one athlete that's racing, so I feel like, maybe I should go there for her, but she also has a lot of friends that are going to be there, cheering her on. So like I may just stay here and watch it online. And if I do, I'll be like glued to it and we can have a similar kind of
yes,
conversation, the
yeah,
week after.
yeah. I look forward to that. Yeah, I mean, the in between would be go over there for all the pre-race fun and the post-race fun, but then hold up in the
Yeah.
condo and watch the race. You know,
Well, I think I've done that before. I've had a
yeah,
condo there, and I'm like, well, it's like I'm in air conditioning. My phone is plugged in. I'm able to like, like
tracking.
hear the commentators and like actually see the coverage of it. But it's like, well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well just be here. I mean,
That's
I
true.
can't
I know.
even count on. I've been there so many times. Like, I don't want to do that to sound bad, but it's just like I don't know. I enjoyed watching it from home last year, so I may do
Yeah,
that again.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
all
Well,
right.
well, thanks, Michelle. And until next time, we will uh, we will talk soon. Thanks all.
Yeah. Peace out.